My pregnant daughter is demanding to move in with me and bringing her boyfriend who doesn't even work. My daughter is 23. I'm dad, by the way. A few years ago, my wife, not her mom, took her to get a birth control implant, and she was always happy on it. Fast forward about a year, and she meets a guy, he's 28, online and falls in love. He lives in another state. She quickly started talking about how they both want to get married and both want to have kids. About 3 months before her trip to meet him in person, she told me she had gotten her implant out and switched to the pill because she doesn't like the implant anymore. This kind of raised my eyebrow. So I talked to her. We go over how important it is to take the pill properly every day, and we talk about other birth control options. She's set on the pill. I also went over the cost of kids and the amount of work and responsibility babies are with her. Part of my concern here is that her mother openly admits she stopped taking her pills and intentionally got pregnant so I would marry her. I did, and we are divorced now. I also told her that I love my kids and raising them, but I had no interest in raising theirs. I'm enjoying retirement. I have a 10 and an 8-year-old with my wife. Well, lo and behold, she gets pregnant on her trip. Boyfriend is not financially stable and is in another state, and due to morning sickness, she's been missing a lot of work. She's intent on keeping the baby. She called last night and asked if she and her boyfriend could come live with me so he could move here and find a job. He doesn't have any significant work history or education and is morbidly obese, which causes him a lot of health problems, so currently he's on disability. And they would save up money and be out before the baby is born. Also note, her mom does not have room at her house. I said no. My daughter has a history of not following through on her commitments, and I know that she won't actually move out before she has the baby, and probably not for a long while after. She has trouble taking responsibility for herself, and I'm guessing we'll be the ones dealing with the baby mostly. We currently have a cat she adopted and then didn't want because she wouldn't clean its box, so it went to the bathroom everywhere. On top of that, I don't want this man that I don't know and she barely knows in my home with my kids. So now he's flying up here so they can find a place together. She currently rents a room in a party house. I told her I would help her with the deposit and first month's rent, but if they wanted to go play house, I wasn't going to fund it, so don't expect me to pay when they can't. Now she's upset with me. Her mom has chewed me up one side and down the other for not supporting her. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. We really need to normalize the fact that as parents, it's your duty to ensure your kid is taken care of, no matter how old they are. Not only are you extremely judgmental of your daughter's life, but now you flat out refuse to help her in her time of need. You sound like a deadbeat dad to me, and honestly, you don't even deserve your daughter. She deserves so much better, and it's a shame you're not man enough to step up to the plate and be an actual father. I didn't even show up at my own dad's funeral because he was also a judgmental jerk that always had an opinion and couldn't keep his mouth shut. Don't be surprised when your daughter doesn't show up at yours or even make a post on social media about it. It's weird to me that a parent is trying to control and question a grown woman's decision to be on birth control. Honestly, just help as much as you can, and in a few years, you'll love your grandchild, and it'll be time for them all to be gone after some extra time to figure it out. You'll be sad, but happy it happened. Besides, you're not retired yet with the other kids at home. I mean, I could go either way here. Do I think I would want you as my parent? No way. Are you within your rights? Sure. Are you a good person? No comment. You're the jerk. Look, that's your daughter. Love her unconditionally like she loves you. She fell in love because she's young and bought into his love bombing. She made a mistake that will one day result in your greatest joy, a grandchild. Will you tell this grandbaby I didn't want you, so I made it harder on your mom to even keep you? You're a dad, and you don't have to agree with her choices. Your only job as a parent is to watch her fall and have her back to stand back up tall. Not the jerk. Stories like this make me so glad I never had kids. You can try as hard as you want to raise your kid to be a responsible person with a good head on their shoulders, but they can still end up being a complete jerk like your daughter. Then you're the one who's expected to take responsibility for their poor actions. The reason all these idiots are calling you the jerk is because in their own lives, they're the ones in your daughter's position. They're the ones who are losers and expecting their parents to baby them well into adulthood. I'm really sorry she turned out to be such a moron, but good luck on your other two. I hope they don't turn out to be miserable shut-ins like most of these losers here on Reddit. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his daughter? Please let us know. I hope each and every commenter who's calling him a bad dad are in the exact same position he's in one day. Actually, I don't. That would just be increasing the population of stupid people. No, you don't understand. I really would not do that if I were you. I work in a union shop, and I've been a shop steward for most of my 25-plus year career. In that time, I've done some crap, both figurative and literal, and every single time I've ever been unwary enough about how fate works to utter the words, "Now I've seen everything," the universe will inevitably hand me its beer and say, "Watch this." Stewards, despite the general perception of us, aren't there to defend employees who are accused of misconduct. We're there to defend the collective bargaining agreement, meaning if you've well and truly done yourself and your future with the agency we both work for, my role is to primarily help you determine which of your options for leaving you're going to exercise. I've been at this rodeo for a long time, and management and I generally have a pretty good understanding of how things are going to go. Enter Jackie. Jackie was one of those unbelievably toxic, peaked in high school cheerleader types with just enough understanding of what our employer does, how it's required to behave within federal guidelines, and what its obligations are when you utter certain mystical phrases like, "I need an accommodation," or discrimination based on a protected class. To be clear, those things are not just law, they're also morally right to be concerned about, and so my employer actually bends over backwards and does backflips to be certain that they're going above and beyond the minimum. Jackie was not a minority in any sense. She was female, but in a workplace that's 80% female. That doesn't quite count. She may well have been disabled, but that was undiagnosed, I think, and I'm inclined to think her claims of it, much like most of the rest of the things she said, were complete fabrications. The point at which I got involved was at the tail end of over a year's worth of actions by Jackie, in which it rapidly became apparent that her manager was, in fact, an excellent candidate for canonization. I got referred to her when one of my other union friends contacted me and said, "Hey, Jackie, so-and-so just got put on administrative leave, and it's total BS. Can you help?" I get referrals like this a lot, both because I've been around forever and because I have a pretty good track record for ensuring that people accused of crap they haven't actually done get treated fairly, so nothing stuck out to me as odd. I contacted her, and she had absolutely no idea why management would put her on administrative leave without any warning and confiscate all of her agency-issued devices, access, and instruct her that she was not to have any contact at all with anyone she worked with during work hours. This immediately sent up a whole host of red flags. For one thing, I know the senior HR guy that is the HR analyst boss who's involved, having been down the road of different situation, but this is what we can do to negotiate with him many times over the years. I don't always agree with him, but he's fair, and usually we can come to some sort of middle ground. At any rate, he would never suspend someone out of the blue without a really good reason. She knows what she's done. She has to. So I gave her my usual spiel of things to do and things you should not do. Don't tell me or our employer things that aren't true, especially if you think it'll make you look bad if you don't. Don't talk to your coworkers. Don't talk to your friends about this, particularly because you live in a town of under 2,000 people. Everyone knows everything about everyone else. Do not talk with management or HR without me present, period. When they do start asking questions, keep answers simple, to the point, short, and do not give lengthy explanations. Tell them what they want to know, and otherwise, shut up. I've been here and done this many times. I know this process very well. I can't tell you what they're going to do, but I can tell you what I think they're going to do, and I'm usually either right or pretty close to being right. I have been surprised. Nearly 3 weeks went by of radio silence from the agency. Other than a bland sort of, "We want to talk with Jackie about utilization of work assignments, tasks, and equipment," email that tells you almost nothing while still being literally true. Finally, it was go time for a meeting, and I did something I haven't done in a really long time. I physically drove to Jackie's worksite instead of attending virtually, over an hour and a half each way. What the heck? The weather was nice. We met ahead of going in, and I asked her if she remembered the rules I gave her at the beginning. She said she did. I asked her if she'd been following them, and she said she'd been very careful to. Swell. In we go. During the meeting, it was almost immediately obvious to me from the questions they started asking that Jackie was in serious trouble. Not like written warning or pay reduction. No, they were going to go for termination and she was probably going to be very lucky if they decided not to refer it to the DA for criminal prosecution. An abbreviated summary are just the high points. Jackie had hundreds of confidential documents and electronic files in her personal possession, many of which fall squarely under HIPAA. She had emailed these out of the government system to one of the 4 or 5 personal email addresses she maintains. Her explanation for this was questionable. Jackie had logged overtime without permission, a lot, and on one memorable date, when she was vacationing in Europe with her family at the time, she said she had called in to attend a meeting but didn't have an answer why that meeting had apparently been 11 and a half hours long and nobody remembered her attending by phone. Jackie had audio recordings of disabled and elderly people with whom she was working that she had taken without their consent or knowledge, a lot of them. Jackie's overall work product and system activity reliably showed that she was logging in at the start of her day from home, and she worked some in the afternoon, but there were hours and hours of time when her computer was idle. She explained this as participating in union activity, which I knew was BS, because Jackie is not a steward. Jackie has no idea what the collective bargaining agreement actually says about much of anything beyond stewards can do whatever they want and management can't say crap, which is uninformed, shall we say. At any rate, steward activity must be recorded and time-coded as such. Jackie has never attended a steward training and so didn't know this. Apparently, nobody ever told her that. There's more. There's so much more. But in the interests of brevity, I will summarize the next 4 months of my dealing with this woman by pointing back to the cardinal rules I gave her and simply say she broke every single one of them. A lot. When it finally got to the dismissal hearing that comes before the "you're fired, get out" letter, she told me going in that she wanted to run things because she had some stuff she wanted to cover that she thought I probably wouldn't be A, comfortable doing, true because it was irrelevant, B, didn't know much about, again true because she had invented details, story, and witnesses as participants, and C, she felt like I wasn't really on her side in this to begin with. Not quite true. She was a member, so my job is representation here. Me. I really don't think that's a good idea. I've done a lot of these. You should let me handle it. Jackie. No, I know what I'm doing, and I talked with my attorney about this a lot. You can't stop me. Me. You're right, I can't, but this isn't going to go the way you think it will. Jackie. I know I'm right. They can't do this to me. Me. This isn't a good idea, but okay, it's your show. In we went and sat down. The senior HR guy I mentioned earlier was there, and he gave me a funny look when I sat back, laptop closed, and said nothing. Dismissal meetings are actually our meeting, and we get to run them from start to finish. They're there to listen. She started talking, and I have to give them credit. They took notes, listened to the things she said, and kept straight faces the entire time. It went exactly as I figured it would. Just the things they had asked her about in the first of the several meetings I attended with Jackie had covered terminable offenses on at least 4 or 5 different subjects, independent of one another. At the end, when she finally wound down, they all turned to me, Jackie included, and asked if I had anything I wanted to cover or that I thought may have been missed. Nope, I said. I think she covered everything already. I don't have anything to add. That afternoon, I got the union copy of her dismissal notice. Generally, they're open to at least discussing the option of the worker resigning and giving them a neutral reference going forward, but that wasn't in the cards. The last I had heard of Jackie, the Department of Justice was involved with her and her husband, and I'm reasonably confident that it didn't go well for her either. I do know that she will never work for the government again, as the letter was pretty explicit about what information they would release to any government agency asking for a reference. So it goes, they followed the collective bargaining agreement, terminating her with ample just cause. Am I the jerk for refusing to help my friend take care of her baby after she kicked out her boyfriend? I, 19 female, recently got a call from my friend, Jess, who's 23, begging me to run to the shop for some baby formula and other food essentials because she was tired. I agreed. I got her some stuff and dropped it off and offered to nurse the baby so she could have a shower and cook some pasta. She was super happy and took up my offer. This was at 4:15, and our boyfriend usually gets back from work at 5:30. Jess had her shower and food, and when it hits 5 p.m., I ask if she's going to be okay for half an hour until her boyfriend gets home. She tells me she kicked him out because he went to visit his mother whilst he had the baby, and he hadn't asked her first. I should be clear that I don't have kids and never intend to, and so I can't pretend to know what goes through a new parent's head, but I found that whole thing so ridiculous. I said that's so stupid of her because he clearly loves her and the baby and he didn't do it to be a jerk. Jess got mad and said I don't get it. We sat in silence for a few moments before she asked me if I could help her the next day with the baby. I said no. She got really upset and asked why. I told her that she needs to beg her boyfriend to come back since the baby is both their responsibility. And whilst I'll help her out every now and then, I'm not going to become a substitute parent when the baby clearly has two loving ones. She told me to leave, but then texted me a few times later that day asking what days I was free the next week so she could get work done. I told her I love her, but she needs to get her act together and sort it out with her boyfriend. She then went to the group chat and began asking our other friends for help and, accidentally, mentioned what I had said to her. Everyone thinks I'm a huge jerk, and I can't help but wonder if I am. I want to be clear, Jess' only qualms are that he went to visit his parents when he had the baby, and that he didn't ask her for permission first because she was asleep. She admitted he's a great father who works hard to provide for the family. He's not a disinterested bum or whatnot. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Not for saying no, but why you said no. She just had a whole baby. You admit you have no parental instinct, so that extends to parental fear of something happening to your baby. You should never assume you know what's happening behind closed doors. She's allowed to have boundaries. You don't know what conversations she's had with her boyfriend about their in-laws. It's not your place to judge her. Not the jerk for not wanting to take care of someone else's kid, but you should probably have been a lot less judgmental when she told you she kicked her boyfriend out, and telling her she needs to get him to come back was definitely way out of line. Her relationship, or lack thereof, is really none of your concern, and for all you know, maybe they had major issues behind closed doors. You're the jerk. You're not an actual friend, so stop calling yourself that. Real friends are there for their friends when they need them. Real friends don't abandon others in their time of need. If you cared about her, even just a bit, then you'd have no problem helping with the baby. You expect her to stay with a guy she's clearly not happy with? What kind of a sociopath are you? It's 2023, and we in no way, shape, or form have to stay with guys we aren't happy with. People complain about how high divorce rate is now. Well, guess what? It's because we stopped settling for guys that suck and don't treat us right. Guys get mad when we say things like, "Where have all the good guys gone?" But the truth is that there just aren't any more of them. All the hot guys will just hook up with us whenever they want to, but the ones who will settle down with us are just average looking, or usually worse. Nobody wants to be stuck with an average looking guy who probably doesn't even make much money. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her friend? Please let us know. These stories really make me never want to have kids. No one ever makes it hot enough? Okay then, you asked for it. I used to be a chef in a Mexican restaurant in a small town in Australia nearly 40 years ago. We were modestly popular and I loved working there. One night, a young man came in to dine with a young lady. It was very obviously a first date. They ordered a nachos to share with a side of jalapenos for their entree, and he ordered a steak Veracruz, hot, for his main, and the young lady ordered a chicken burrito, mild, for hers. I, as I usually did throughout the night, would walk around the tables and ask if people were enjoying the food. After the nachos, I checked on them, and the young man informed me that the chili that accompanied the nachos were not hot at all, and that he loved hot food. I was informed that he had traveled extensively and had eaten some of the hottest foods in the world, and that no one had ever made a dish too hot for him. He reiterated that he wanted his steak main extra hot. To be honest, I found him to be pompous and rather obnoxious in the way he was speaking down to me, and found myself taking a disliking to him. I will add at this point that the young lady was looking a little uncomfortable, and I got the impression her date was not going as she had expected. I headed to the kitchen. I made her a lovely chicken burrito while putting together his steak. He wanted it hot? He was going to get it. Our steak Veracruz was usually a steak cooked and topped with our house tomato sauce base with some bell peppers and onions with a touch of chili. On this occasion, I set to work. Keep in mind, this was Australia back in the 80s, and we did not get a lot of different chilies back then, and a jalapeno was considered hot by most Aussie palates. Hey, we were an uneducated bunch. I had a few bird's eye chilies in the kitchen that were mainly there for the staff and the resident Mexican guitarist meals, so I started with those. I finally diced about 10 of those with their seeds. I then threw in the chilies, and then I added about a tablespoon of chili powder and about a tablespoon of cayenne. I soon felt the fumes hit my nose and the back of my throat, and my eyes started watering. I ran to the door of the kitchen to get a breath of breathable air, as the air in my tiny kitchen was rapidly becoming unbreathable. I ran back to my pan and put a ladle of the house tomato sauce in. I then let that simmer for a few minutes. I then added some chopped up jalapenos from a jar in my fridge and thought, why not? And in went a bit more chili powder. I then put the flash fried steak in to finish it off in the sauce. I served it all up on a plate with some rice, served up the chicken burrito, and hit the bell for the waitress to serve it to the table. The waitress came back and told me that as she placed it in front of him, he said, "This had better be hot." She assured him the chef had done as he requested. I went to the door of the kitchen, joined by my waitress, to watch the show unfold, and unfold it did. I watched with glee as he sliced the steak, took a piece of his fork, and with a smug look on his face, he put it in his mouth. He took a chew and then realized his mistake. I saw it. That moment when his face changed, but he was trying so hard not to show it. He couldn't. He was on a date and he had bragged so hard, and now he had to go through with it. He ate the steak. I could see every ounce of pain on his face. He struggled hard. His date watched him with a slight smile on her lips, and I got the impression that she was thoroughly enjoying his pain. He went through several jugs of water. He sweated. He barely spoke. He looked really uncomfortable. At the end of the meal, I came out of the kitchen and asked him if he had enjoyed his meal. His words? "Could have been hotter." He never came back. His date? She became a regular and told us he was an insufferable fool and she never saw him again. I have no regrets other than I wish Carolina Reapers had been around back then. No, I said okay. A few years ago, I was moving my business to a new location that needed 6 months to be built out. I informed our current alarm company a few months before the move that we'd be moving services, which for whatever reason they couldn't do. I had to open a new site on the account, and then I could close the old when after the move. Sure, that's fine. They got all the details and sold me the newer system that would be connected to the internet so I could monitor it from my phone. Sounds great. So they told me that they could install it next week, but I had to have the internet set up and running before they could do it. I informed them the phone lines and internet would not be installed until later, as I didn't want to pay for services we were not using, and I would let them know when that was installed so that they could come out for their install. Everything satisfied, the call was complete. A few days later, I started getting weekly phone calls from their installers telling me that they were on their way to the new site to do the install. To which I had to go through the explanation of the internet won't be installed until later and that I would call them and let them know when that was done. Each time they said, "Oh, okay, sounds good, we'll wait to hear from you." But then the following week, it would repeat again. On the 6th week, I got the same weekly call from the alarm company installer. "Hi, this is Jim. Just letting you know we'll be at your site in about 30 minutes to do the install." So this time I said, "Okay." We hung up and I went back to work, which was happening at our current location. No workers or work was happening at the new site on this day. About 30 minutes later, I got a call from Jim saying the doors are locked and nobody's answering. I said, "I know. Nobody's there today and the internet won't be installed until next month anyway." At this point, he starts getting agitated with me and asked why I scheduled an install for today and why I told him I'd be there when he called. I explained, "I didn't. You said you'd be there in 30 minutes. I said okay. Amazingly, the calls stopped and I called them a couple weeks before the move and they came out and installed just fine. Wanted to answer a few questions asked in the comments as I tried to keep the story concise so it didn't drag on. Yes, the company was ADT. The contract didn't start until they did the install, and install was free, so I wasn't paying for the install. Yes, I did call ADT customer service after the first installer called, saying that they were on their way. That did not help. Besides letting the installer come out, I was never rude to or angry with them since I knew it wasn't their fault, and I explained the situation just like I'd done the first 5 times. They just got caught up in the game. And I need to give credit to my uncle for this solution, as this was applied learning. He did something very similar to his sister a long time ago, and this story became a legend in my family. I've used it many times. Am I the jerk for getting my son's ex better food than him? My son lives with me, which is fine. He's 35, but I have a big house and I appreciate the company and occasional help around the house. Previously, he lived with his ex-girlfriend, Kira, who he had 2 kids with. I love my grandsons and was very blessed that even from pregnancy, that Kira let me be very involved, as her mother had passed when she was very young and she doesn't have much family as she bounced around the foster system. Early on, even before the kids, we became close and I viewed her as a daughter, which my son encouraged. Last year, while Kira was pregnant with their second, they split up. My son blames Kira, but I know from living with him and being a close support that it is at best 50-50. Once they split, my son decided he didn't want anything to do with Kira or the kids, and his previously encouraged and embraced view of our friendship turned, and he wanted me to have nothing to do with Kira or the kids. I told him no. I was going to continue to be a big part of my grandkids and Kira's life. This has caused some friction, but we mostly operate on a don't ask, don't tell. Once a week, I go to Kira's to see the kids, usually after I go grocery shopping. My son always gives me a list of what he wants, and then I get that, plus what I want and what I use to cook for us during the week. I do all the cooking for me and my son, but he often doesn't eat my food and opts for the ready-made stuff he asks me to get him instead if that matters, and I always ask Kira if she needs anything. She usually says no, but I still always bring some fruits and veggies. She likes the same food I do, so I also will sometimes bring her part of what I get for myself if I know it's too much for me to eat during the week. An example is salmon. My son hates fish, but Kira and the kids love it, so I'll get a big one and portion it at Kira's and then bring home what I will eat for myself. Friday, my son saw the receipt from the groceries and was irate at how much the salmon cost for the amount I got. I told him the truth, that I gave 2/3 of the salmon to Kira. He blew up and demanded I stop buying her groceries, or if I continue, he wants the same amount spent on him. The thing is, I get him everything he asks for. It's just that a box of Pizza Pops is less money than salmon. I also tend to get organic produce for myself and Kira and the boys, but my son refuses to eat certain things if they are organic. It doesn't make sense to me, but he said I'm a jerk and read me a post from here about another mom who gave better food to one kid over another, so I thought maybe I would post. Update. Many of you have pointed out that I'm enabling my son. I didn't think I was because I've been very clear how I feel about him not being there for the boys, but actions are as important as words. I will not stop being in Kira and the boys' lives ever, and in fact, I will probably increase the amount of time and resources I give to them. I also want to just state in no uncertain terms, as I have had a couple messages and comments about it, Kira was never unfaithful. Her only crime was being unwilling to forgive my son for some actions unless he went to therapy, which he did not do, and rightfully informing HR at his former workplace of something relevant. OMG, not the jerk. Your son is totally taking advantage of you and has no say whatsoever as to how you spend your money or time. I think it's time he finds his own place and takes responsibility for himself and the kids. Not the jerk for buying her groceries, not the jerk for helping Kira out, and not the jerk for remaining in her and your grandkids' lives, not the jerk for supporting her and her family. I'm sure she needs it. However, your son is the biggest and worst type of jerk there is. He's a classic deadbeat, dropping his kids regardless of who the blame is on. He's also a jerk for living in his mommy's basement, having mommy buy his groceries, and getting mad that mommy is taking care of his kids. Finally, you're the jerk for supporting this deadbeat behavior. Shame on you. Housing association wants me to pay my late aunt's debt? No, pay me the money I overpaid instead. Before I lived in my current place, I was living with my aunt. She was the main tenant who sorted the bills, and I would pay her a lump sum each month as board payments. In early 2021, she passed unexpectedly. Naturally, I didn't want to continue living in this place. Bad memories and bearing the responsibility for an entire place alone wasn't feasible for me financially at the time. After speaking with the housing association, I was informed the only way to end the tenancy would be by getting the tenancy agreement moved over into my name before terminating the tenancy when I was ready to move out. What I didn't know at this point was that my aunt was in arrears on the rent payments. When it came to the point of leaving the tenancy, I had money in savings and just settled up the rent entirely, paying £500 of my aunt's arrears on top of the rent I personally owed from living there alone. I then stayed at the place for a few more weeks before closing the tenancy. In hindsight, I probably should have queried the payment, but at that point, I just wanted to get rid of the place. After moving into my new place, I was getting pestered by the housing association who said I still owed £300 on the previous house. There was a lot of back and forth before I then asked for a copy of the rent statement. It was around this time that I was speaking to people about this money I supposedly owed. I was informed that I probably shouldn't be liable for my aunt's death, as I didn't receive the estate and was not the next of kin. However, there was also an argument to be made that I was liable for the debt, as technically my name was on the agreement and I became the main tenant. With this information in mind, I looked at the rent statement, worked out how much money I owed from the first week after my aunt had passed, and deducted it from my total rent payments made after that point. It turned out I had paid £200 extra, assuming I wasn't liable for the debt. I presented all my working out in a thorough email and sent it over. I didn't hear anything back from them after that, conveniently, and assumed it was all over. I decided not to pursue this as I was sick of being pestered by them, and I wasn't 100% sure if I was or wasn't liable for this money. Fast forward nearly 2 years. I received a letter last month just before Christmas stating that I still owed this £300 and that it would be sent to debt collectors if nothing was done. At this point, I was upset. I spoke to someone who was able to tell me for sure that I'm not liable for the debt in this particular situation, so I sent a firmly written email detailing how I don't owe this money, but in fact, they owed me, provided all of the evidence, and threatened small claims if the situation wasn't rectified soon. It took weeks of me pestering them via phone calls and emails for me to get in contact with a lovely woman who apologized on behalf of the company on how I was treated. She then got the ball rolling, and eventually my £200 refund cleared the other day. This was a particularly satisfying end, because if they would have just left it, I wouldn't have chased it up, and they would be £200 better off. What a shame.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.